Brethren, this short film on how to conduct multiple candidate ceremonies was prefigured at the quarterly communication in December. This is about re-establishing old customs and for sustaining customs that some lodges already have. My Oxfordshire Lodge has undertaken multiple candidate ceremonies since it was founded in 1819 without interruption. My Cambridgeshire Lodge has recently started doing multiple candidate ceremonies after a gap of 50 years. This film is designed to enable you to understand how a multiple candidate ceremony can be conducted and conducted well, and remove some of those fears which naturally arise for masters, directors of ceremonies, and secretaries and deacons in how to handle these. I do hope that you will find this short film very helpful.
Whom have you there?
Mr. Redpath, Mr. Trevane, Mr. Yer, and Mr. Fonseca. 4 candidates in the state of...
It is important for all the floor officers to learn the names of all the candidates, rather than saying 4 candidates, or 4 gentlemen, or eventually 4 brethren, and ensures that each candidate feels personally involved in the ceremony.
Halt to report to the Worshipful Master.
After the Worshipful Master has announced that the candidates will pass around the lodge, the junior deacon leads the candidates to the junior warden's pedestal. There is nothing in the ritual that requires the Worshipful Master's or warden's chairs to be occupied at all times. Here, with 4 candidates, it is easier for the junior warden to leave his chair for the initial interaction with the candidates, returning to it for the interrogation.
Whom have you there?
At the end of the interrogation, the junior warden leaves his chair once again to admit the candidates individually. After the senior warden's opening interrogation, he does not return to his chair, but remains on the floor. The deacons line up the candidates ready for their presentation, with each candidate's right hand resting on the left shoulder of the candidate to his right. The senior warden then presents the candidates from the floor. The junior deacon should always be to the right of the line of candidates and should lead them in a continuous line around the lodge. The junior deacon advances the first candidate to the pedestal. And he is placed in the furthest right position by the Director of Ceremonies with some reassuring words. The junior deacon then advances the last candidate to the pedestal, the Director of Ceremonies placing him in the furthest left position. The remaining candidates are then placed in order between the first and the last candidate. More than one volume of the sacred law may be required, either to ensure the candidates can all comfortably reach it, or because an additional book, for example a Quran, may be required. This can be placed alongside the existing volume of the sacred law, or, as here, on another stand to the side of the pedestal. The deacons wait until all candidates are in place, then each takes up his position behind his candidate. After the obligation, the worshipful master raises each candidate in turn. The candidates are then moved by the deacons into position ready for the next part of the ceremony. The deacons can either move the candidates a few steps backwards, with the worshipful master remaining in his chair, or, as we see here, the deacons place the candidates in the northeast, with the worshipful master leaving his chair to continue the ceremony from the floor. Again, there is no requirement for the worshipful master's chair to remain occupied at all times. The worshipful master communicates the sign on his own, but for the communication of the grip and token, he is assisted by an appropriate number of past masters who have been sitting in the southeast. When the candidates are proved by the wardens, there is no need for past masters to be involved. The deacons can fulfill this role. As we see here, the junior warden leaves his chair to prove the lead candidate, instructing the remaining candidates to turn to their guides to prove the grip or token. The candidates answer the questions together. At the end of the examination, the junior warden instructs the first candidate to pass, moving down the line of candidates, repeating that instruction. He then returns to his chair, and the junior deacon leads the candidates to the senior warden. After proving the candidates, the senior warden, as before, remains on the floor to present the newly initiated brethren to the worshipful master, who directs him to invest them.
Brother Senior Warden, I delegate you to invest them with the distinguishing badge of a Mason.
The candidates can either each be invested by the senior warden, or, in the interests of time, with the assistance of past masters, as we see here. For the charity charge, the junior deacon inquires of each candidate in turn whether he has anything to give to charity, and each candidate answers individually. The second and third questions are put to all candidates at the same time, and they reply together.
Yes.
The working tools can either be presented from the worshipful master's pedestal, or, as here, from a position on the floor in front of the candidates. There is nothing in the ritual which prevents the brother making the presentation from picking up the working tools. Before the candidates retire to restore their personal comforts, they are placed in a line in the west to salute the worshipful master. However, if time is pressing, there is no specific need for the candidates to retire at this point. They can merely make themselves more comfortable by adjusting their clothing while in the lodge room, before being moved into position for the charge. The candidates are placed in a position convenient to receive the charge after initiation. If, as is the custom in some lodges, the senior warden delivers the charge, then the candidates should be placed in a more suitable position in the northwest. There is, however, no requirement for the senior warden to remain in his chair when delivering this ritual. At the end of the ceremony, the candidates are seated in the northeast, and the deacons return to their chairs.
Brilliant. You've seen the floor work demonstration, but how does a multiple candidate ceremony work in practice? What does it mean for the candidates? What work is required of the DC and Secretary? To find out, RW Brother Neil Connolly, Provincial Grand Master of Hertfordshire, has been speaking to some brethren who led.
Tom, Bill, I know that you've been involved in multiple ceremonies for quite some time now. And you started off doing that very much as a new Mason.
Yeah.
But were you a multiple candidate?
No, I was a single candidate. I was initiated, passed and raised as a single candidate and hadn't heard of multiple candidate ceremonies until I was asked to attend a lodge of instruction one day at another lodge, and then found that they were doing this weird thing of initiating 4 people. And straight away, the guard went up and thought, well, that's not going to work. How? And then exploring it, trialing it, and participating in it as a deacon, I was then able to see the simplicity of taking them round and how the ritual naturally lends itself to become something for multiple candidates. And none of the grandeur, none of the great moment of revelation was lost. It was enhanced. And the candidates that I got to see go through, one of them is now the past master of that lodge. The other 3 are engaged as past masters of that lodge. They're all participating, they're all enjoying their Freemasonry, and they're able to keep that bond going far greater than anything I ever saw.
So if we take that back to you, George, and you're here today as a representative of somebody who's quite recently gone through that multiple candidate experience.
Certainly, yeah.
And you were one of how many when you were initiated?
5.
5. Yeah, okay. So 5 of you outside of the door of the lodge, describe what was going through your heads or what your experiences were, because you didn't know any of these people, did you?
Didn't know any of the people, and was introduced to Masonry by my brother, who refused to tell me what the first initiation was going to be all about. So we're all in a similar boat. Now there's still know what's going on, but at least we knew we had each other, right? So we're in a room just outside the main hall, and all of the members of 10K would walk past and say good luck, nothing to worry about, good luck, nothing to worry about, and of course that leads you to worry. You're a little bit anxious, but you know that there are at least 4 other people that are doing it with you, so you know that you'll have that shared experience to at least base any sort of friendship and future relations. Sure. We formed a group chat, the 5 of us, afterwards, just to invite each other to our second and any future events that we all want to go to together. And we went out one night and we were talking about our experience, and we all seemed to remember things in different orders. We know that we kneeled I think we all reached the consensus that we were in one room rather than multiple rooms, which is what it felt like at different points, different doors knocking at different points.
You alluded to something about getting confused between your left and right feet.
Yes. So we stood up, or you're told to kneel, and then at some point you're told to step forward with your left foot, and then you go around and you stop somewhere, and then you're meant to step forward. But every single time it's meant to be with your left foot. I kept forgetting this. And it was only at the point where somebody nudged me a bit too hard, it felt a bit too familiar, with the left foot, and I realised it was my brother Jacob.
Right.
Up until that point, I didn't know. He didn't tell me. I didn't know he was part of the ceremony. I knew he was a Mason. He told me he was a Mason years ago, but I didn't know how it worked, whether he'd be invited to be part of the ceremony, whether different lodges mixed. I knew nothing going into it at all.
So he isn't a member of the lodge that you came into?
No.
Okay, so he was asked to be one of the deacons?
Yes.
And was obviously allocated you because of it being your literal brother?
Yes, and I think that speaks to the administration. I mean, I hate to say it when Robin's here, but I think it speaks to the administrative proficiency of 10K Lord.
That's a very, very good way of turning to Robin then. So Robin, you're the secretary of a lodge. I know you've been secretary and treasurer of several lodges. And I believe you've witnessed a big party too, as an organiser, certainly the administrative side, of several multiple ceremony degree ceremonies.
Yes, there is more work to organise a multiple candidate ceremony, but there are things that have really helped. For example, the removal of the requirement for a dispensation to recent quarterly communication. That's incredibly helpful for relieving two burdens. Firstly, an administrative burden of having to apply for a dispensation, but also the financial burden of having to pay for a dispensation every time you want to have a ceremony with more than two candidates. That's hugely helpful.
And what's the maximum number that you've managed to process as a single entity so far?
Well, a few years ago, I think we passed 11. That was a while ago. Nowadays, we're a bit more constrained by room size, so we tend to stick to 8 maximum these days.
Okay, that's good. And that's this is a dispensation that happened relatively recently for all craft lodges, is that correct?
Yes, so the March quarterly communication of Grand Lodge is when this was passed. This motion was passed to remove the rule in the Book of Constitutions requiring a dispensation for a ceremony with more than two candidates.
And you find now that the secretarial duties are more electronic, that's actually easy to get with it, because there's some time ago you were doing.
So as someone who's been secretary and treasurer of lodges that both have Hermes and don't have Hermes, it's they're very different, but in both cases there are a number of key things, but I think my two main ones are start everything well before you think you're going to have to start it, just so that you can get everything sorted in time. You've got your candidates lined up, your DC knows what's going on administratively, you give the information to your DC. But the second key point is make sure you have a great team around you. Make sure your mentor and your membership officer are the right people who are on top of their portfolio, interviewing candidates, getting that pipeline of candidates, doing some of the paperwork to help you out. If you have a situation like George, where someone in the family is a Freemason, as we did for 3 of the candidates in the ceremony that George was involved in, then you correspond with their family members and their guests and get them involved in the ceremony, even if they're not members of the lodge. It's a great thing to do.
Okay, so there's just a slightly wider burden of administration just because you want so many people to come and support them as much as there is to. So, coming back, George, you started to mention earlier on about the bond that has developed as a result of 5 of you being initiated together.
Yeah.
When were you initiated? How long ago was that?
That was in November.
November, okay, so relatively recent, so 4 or 5 months ago.
Yeah.
I believe you've also had your
I've had my second.
You've had your passing already.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Okay.
yeah, passing already. So, how about the others? Have they had theirs?
So 2 of us have already, and then we've got 3 who are having all of their seconds on the same day, 23rd March.
Okay.
Of course, we're all going to go and support them, but 1 in the morning, 1 in the evening. I think we've got lunch, and we've all go for lunch in between as well.
Yeah.
And again, that's one of those things which doesn't have to happen after your first.
Yeah.
But you're happy that it did, because so with all of the different pubs, we did Connell Club, for example.
In that.
Yeah, so I invited the field members to join. I told them, I thought this is something that it seems like Masons do. Sure. We should probably be doing this, and they're all up for it. So it helps to have that common experience be the birth of other common interactions.
So have you kept together? Do you keep in regular contact with each other?
Yeah.
And how do you do that?
Yeah, we've got a WhatsApp group.
The bad as WhatsApp.
Yeah, so we've got a WhatsApp group, which we use fairly regularly.
Yeah.
So one of our members, Stefan, he is of German origin, so he had his German origin. We didn't go because we didn't think we would understand what was going on. Nonetheless, we saw the hat, saw the glove, saw the top hat, gloves, put himself red socks. Don't know why they won't buy it, but so things like that, especially as they relate to the Masonic journey, are nice to be able to share with somebody who's just as far along as you are.
So you've experienced both the multiple candidate
Yep.
and being a single candidate. You've alluded to the fact that they are 2 slightly different experiences.
Yep.
As a preference, which one do you think has probably had the most positive effect on you?
I would have said that it's very difficult to judge, because you can only have a single or multiple. You can't have both. So it's very difficult to compare.
Yeah.
Equally, my second found me at a different time to my first. So for example, if it had been the other way around, so my first was by myself, my second was joined, perhaps I would have waited a long time to realize the benefits of having done it with somebody else until my third, for example, when I'd formed the same relationships. But what I would say is that nothing is lost in terms of the candidate experience if there are multiple candidates there.
Yep.
Something different happens there, which especially mine is a perfect example, which relates to encouraging the journey, actually being a bit more interested and willing to understand a bit more about Masonry. That comes as second nature. One, because we're all inherently competitive to one extent. So if somebody knows their lines, you want to make sure you know your lines, you don't want to embarrass yourself. But also because you know that at future experiences, you always, at a starting point, at least have the other person to talk to. I mean, everybody's friendly, don't get me wrong, but it's never a foreign room you have to go to. So I haven't answered your question. That is intentional.
You've got a very strong future in politics, actually. Okay, so I like the idea that there's the WhatsApp group, which they didn't have when I was in your shoes 30 odd years ago. So from that point of view, I think that's a real positive modern twist, and also a positive twist, and perhaps a multiple candidacy, because you have the ability to communicate with each other. I do like the edge of competition. That sounds real fun. And I'm sure that will continue. So I'm going to turn to Tom again, because you've acted as a deacon on these, but you're also a director of ceremonies. And I know you're involved with the university scheme in Hertfordshire, and have been for some time on that. And you've seen that process evolve.
Yeah.
How do you think that's affected the members of the lodge? And there's 2 types of members. There's those who go through the multiple candidacy process, but there are also those who perhaps join from other lodges or are longer standing members. Where do you think there's been a change in the dynamic there?
So the way in which the university scheme lodges that I'm aware of have been working is involving more members, whether that be the junior members that have been initiated, passed and raised within the lodge, or joiners from other lodges. We find that in our university scheme lodge and the multiple candidates that we're working with, we get a lot of joining members come into the lodge because they want to participate, they want to engage. So we have assistant deacons, assistant ones, and some of the team take this candidate in that direction, which means that we have a great lodge of instruction. And people come to the lodge of instruction with something to do. It's not just about the progressive officers learning their lines and going through their perambulations and that sort of thing. It's about engaging, choreographing a huge operation of, if you've got 5 candidates, you've got 5 deacons to go around with them, which means you've got 4 more people than you would have normally involved in the ceremony. 4 more past masters that might have felt a bit disengaged otherwise. Past masters that want to give something to the lodge, or people that haven't quite got onto the ladder yet, to stewards that want to engage. And it's a great opportunity for them to not just do the first bit of ritual, working tools or whatever it might be, but learn the movements.
So are you saying then that you've got past masters who have that sort of quiet time until there's a job for them to do after they come out of the chair, getting involved, and presumably they act as both deacons and as surrogate wardens?
Yeah, so we really engaged in splitting the ritual to make it more effective for the master to be able to learn particular chunks at a time that enable him not to become overburdened with things. Engage those past masters that are in that gap between, are they going to take their first office out of the chair, or are they going to wait for something else? But also right at the bottom end of the ladder, those people that have been initiated and want to get involved in the next initiation, those people that are on the steward's bench, they're not quite in a guard yet.
So you're saying you might use a fellow craft as a deacon?
Yeah.
So they're very early engagement then.
And that engagement leads to their attendance. And by engaging them at an early stage and making them feel part of the lodge, not just a witness, but a participant, they want to come to lodge instruction, they want to engage more. And we find that by engaging them at an early stage, it sets the lodge in operation for the future. In our lodge in Hertfordshire, we've got at least the next 15 years worth of officers lined up if we carry on going the way we're going, which means as a DC, I don't have to scramble around looking for somebody to do ritual. I've got lots of willing volunteers, which makes my life a lot easier.
George, you mentioned obviously the collective experience of being part of the multiple candidacy ceremony, but I also understand that you're a member of the Connaught Club.
Yeah.
Now, for people in London, they'll know exactly what that is, but we'll come back to that. But for the rest of the country, that's effectively a light blues club. So it's for the newer, younger Masons. That's another social dimension to your Masonry. Or what have you learned from them?
And so, you learn about Masonry, what it means, what progression potentially looks like. Learn about this thing called Royal Arch, which I'm sure will be explained to me in more detail as I progress in my Masonic career. But again, you learn a lot about what being a Mason is, as opposed to what you necessarily thought it might be or would have guessed it might be before you actually became one.
Sure. George, thank you so much for being so open with your experience, and hope that the positive frame of mind that you've come over today and enthusiasm will carry on, and you will infect many more people with that passionate enthusiasm for your earlier stage of Masonry. Tom, I've known you for quite some time. You've never lost any of your enthusiasm, and you've been involved in all this modern service for quite some time. You're both almost exactly the same age, which is quite interesting. And Robin, of course, thank you to put the voice of reason behind the fact that actually trying to organise this is not actually that difficult. And with just a little bit of extra effort, you can have the kind of experiences that, George, you've been able to enjoy. Thank you all very much.
I very much hope that you will take to heart this film and how it will help you. For those lodges that have not been used to doing these ceremonies, I hope it will help tremendously. Clearly, an enterprise like this has not just happened, and I would like to thank my fellow rulers for participating, to the Grand Director of Ceremonies, and particularly Paul Greer for masterminding it, and the Grand Secretary and his team for facilitating it. But above all, to those members who have actually helped from as far afield as the District of Sri Lanka. They've actually participated in multiple candidate ceremonies, and I'm very grateful for all their assistance in providing this film.